And today we have a very interesting story here. Can you go ahead and state your name and who you are and where you come from?
Yes, my name is Brice Chapman. I'm from Lubbock, Texas. I perform trick roping. I have an act, and I shoe horses for a living. And today we're here to talk about an issue with judicial corruption and attorneys' corruption, and just a whole lot of stuff in general that the general public is not aware of what's going on in the world of the judiciary. First off, in 2004, this is over a divorce case. My wife filed for divorce in 2004, and she hired an attorney by the name of Stephen L. Johnson out of Lubbock. Stephen L. Johnson had threatened me 3 or 4 times on the telephone that he was going to ruin my reputation, my career, and take everything I own if I didn't comply with his orders, and I did not have an attorney at the time. My wife eventually changed her mind and came back. They non-suited the suit. Stephen L. Johnson, her attorney, non-suited the suit, which they dissolved the suit after she had paid him and all these threats had occurred in 2005. Well, my wife applied for a divorce again in 2015. And when she had applied for it, I did not have an attorney. And she and I had entered into an agreement, which the agreement was not exactly what was called for on the decree that was signed. I looked at the signature as the judge, and come to find out, the judge had been her previous attorney. So under the Constitution of the state of Texas and under the Constitution of the United States, the judge cannot have sit as counsel on the case, and he must disqualify. So under Texas Rules of Civil Procedure 18B 1A states that the judge cannot have been the attorney for one of the litigants in the same matter of controversy and must disqualify. Not hopefully, not shall, not, well, I'm thinking about it. It's an automatic disqualification. I objected to this in 2016, and I have letters from and emails from my wife's attorney on the second petition for divorce and an objection. I rescinded my signature off of the second divorce petition because the judge was her attorney. And at that point, my wife and I had still been living together. Well, this same judge, Stephen L. Johnson, he was the attorney for her, as you can read right here, Stephen L. Johnson. Here's his bar card number 107-03875. That was when he was her attorney. And then that was the first time. And then here is his signature for when he was the judge presiding, Stephen L. Johnson, judge presiding. On this case, he was the attorney on a divorce petition between the same 2 litigants. And on this 2015 case, he was the judge, which is an automatic constitutionally disqualified judge, which makes the divorce petition void from its inception ab initio is how they pronounce it. Precedent law, which is cases are mandated to be, they can't be relitigated on cases that have been decided on the same exact matters before with judicial disqualifications or whatever they may be. And so I brought this to the court's attention. I hired an attorney named Stacy Barber out of Crenshaw, Dupree, and Milam out of Lubbock. I asked the attorney, I said, the judge was my wife's attorney on this divorce petition. And her response, and I have it on a bar complaint, and the State Bar of Texas did nothing to this attorney. I said, that judge was my wife's attorney, and she says, Brice, there is no way that can be, there's no way that could happen.
And what year was this again?
And this was in 2015. And I said, I just paid you $6,500 to tell me that I can't read? I mean, it says Stephen Johnson just as plain as you can say it right there. Stephen Johnson is the judge, Stephen Johnson is his attorney, and I've only been married 1 time.
Okay. It's a lot of jargon, especially with other cases I've dealt with, and a lot of us are not too hip with this, right? So you filed for the divorce, right? You or her?
She did.
Okay, she did. And the issue here is he was the judge and her attorney, correct?
That's correct.
And you found this out when?
I found this out that he was that he was the judge about a month after it was signed in January 7th of 2016. So I took this to her attorney, his name was Aubrey Fouts, on the second divorce petition. It's the same matter in controversy. The judge had written basically the first one. So when I asked him that, he says, well, had I known that that's what you were going to come talk to me about, I would have never talked to you. I have an email from this attorney saying that I know you came in to rescind your signature, and that I needed to hire an attorney. I don't have to hire an attorney. People out there think that they have to hire an attorney. But in retrospect of what's happening in today's modern society, artificial intelligence is going to put these attorneys and judges out of business, and they're scared of it. And I've been to Austin quite a bit this year on Judicial, on bills. Most of the people that were in those bill discussions were attorneys, because they're running scared. They have $200,000 worth of education, and they're about to lose they're fixing to lose their jobs. It's going to be like what Jeff Bezos did to Blockbuster. He's going to put people out of business, and that's what artificial intelligence is going to do. And that's why that people need to gain the confidence and start learning what the law actually is. It's basically simple. The Declaration of Independence starts out, it's one sentence on the first paragraph. It says, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume amongst the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they declare the causes which impel them to the separation. And then we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to ensure these rights, governments have been instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Okay, it goes on and talks about the king's usurpations. But I do not consent, even if I agreed to those terms and conditions that were signed on that document right there. That judge cannot sign that piece of paper. It's called running a conflict of interest check. And all they have to do is look up the person's last 3 digits of their social security number or their driver license to see if this attorney had represented one of the clients. It's a pretty simple process.
I wouldn't even say someone like me is not too knowledgeable about this. That's a big conflict of interest here. Back to that verse from the Constitution there, you kind of got choked up about it. What does that actually mean in layman's terms, and why does that mean so much to you that you are reciting it and I could just see it, it just really hits you? Why?
Well, I memorized the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence word for word, the Bill of Rights. I was incarcerated unlawfully for over a year and a half on this void judgment based off of these guys. When you look back at those men that had already been through 150 years before the Declaration of Independence and Constitution were written, those men in the United States had already been 150 years. The king was taking their property. He was throwing them in jail for no reason. He was sending judges to order them to go to prison for no reason. They're doing the exact same thing right now, currently in the continental United States. About 80 to 90% of incarcerated inmates are in jail for no reason.
That's a very bold statement. How is that true?
Well, it's a due process violation. Most people that are thrown in jail, if you tell them, hey, under Section 147 and 148, you're taking me, when you're arrested, you take me to the judge or the magistrate immediately without delay. It doesn't mean, immediately without delay doesn't mean This is a due process violation. This is how simple the due process is. If you ask to go see the magistrate immediately, they must take the arrested immediately without delay. Not take you, throw you in jail, not book you, not wait 24 to 48 hours to see the judge or the magistrate. No, that's not how it works. Because a magistrate works 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, except for Saturday. And then they run them in rotations. They run them in different magistrates. So if you're arrested in the county on the south side of the county, and they pass the courthouse to go to the judge on the northeast side of town or the county, that's not taking you to the nearest magistrate. They sign up for it. Remember, I'll go to the military. I'll go be a judge. I'll run for public service. When they do that, they lose all their private capacity because they signed up to work for the public at large. Which means if you're a judge and you live in Wolford, Texas, and you're arrested in Ropesville, they have to take you to the. Did you know that a mayor of a town or a village or an incorporated city is also a mayor? I mean a magistrate. A mayor is a magistrate. So they have the propensity or the capability for an arrested to be taken to that person, and then you have to say, hey, judge or magistrate, he can't arrest me because that's not my name. They got the wrong mistaken identity. Or in this case, you can just say, hey, this judge was my wife's attorney, and you need to release me immediately. This is a void judgment, just like a due process violations. If you read, there's a treatise of false arrest and wrongful imprisonment, and it's a PDF that you can get on the internet. I think it's 40 pages. Even if that's why they have lights on the top of those cars. If a police officer pulls over and looks back and says, why did you rob that bank, or why did you blah, 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 whatever. If they stop, that's a due process violation, and you get off of your crime, whatever it is. They have to use those lights. They can run stoplights. They can run stop signs. They have to get you to the nearest magistrate immediately without delay. If they don't, that is a due process violation.
Okay, and you're saying this, how come it's not enforced or more people don't know about it? I mean, I don't even know if the police or arresting officers would even know about this. What's the issue with that?
Well, I hate to tell you this, but they're sent to police officers training school. They know that they're doing wrong. They know it 100%. Ignorance of the law will not excuse is deep rooted in our state. That's a case called Reber versus Steele. And all judicial recordings and acts have to be taken from every other state. That's why the Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of the land. That's why they have the Supremacy Clause. That's why they have the 14th Amendment on the Due Process Clause. It states in any time that you're arrested, you have to follow due process. And that person, you could be robbing a bank and come out and you have a black shirt on, and the bank robber had a black shirt on. They grabbed the wrong person. That's why you take it to the magistrate. The bank knows exactly how much money was stolen. They have it calibrated. In today's society, everything's digitally remastered, and they know exactly how much money is missing from those cash drawers, or they have a registration of your car. The problem with the judicial system, it's turned into a cash machine, and people don't realize it. What happens is all these attorneys have a computer program called LexisNexis or Westlaw, and all of these cases they're called shepherding. It's called shepherding. It's put into a database for precedent case law. For what's been decided before must be decided again. So they put this in there so they know, under this LexisNexis and Westlaw, they know your name, they know what your car registration number is, they know the VIN number of your car, they know whether you have insurance, they know your driver license, they know where you live, they know everything about you. They even know what your property address is on this LexisNexis. And all attorneys have access to this because it's probably a computer program probably worth $25,000 to $10,000 a month. They know every foreclosure sale. They knew about my ranch that was being sold. As a matter of fact, when they sold my property, I'm going to show you something here. This is the Lake Bertram, Lake 7 out of Lubbock, Texas. This property right here is owned by Brian Quinn. He's the Chief Justice for the Amarillo Court of Appeals. He's the one that stands to get $250 million for this lake project. And here's my property. It borders the city and Brian Quinn's property, and they're going to stand to get $250 million. The reason why they want this property, and they in-house this Martha Stewart style, it's organized crime. It's what happens from public. It's a RICO violation, Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organization Act. And I have here is, well, if I can get to it, hold on. It'll stop here. Okay, here's an organized crime felony criminal complaint. And the names on this are judges and attorneys, the DA. This one judge, Ed Self, was named on a felony criminal complaint on, where's the date on this? I have it right here, 13th day of November 2024. That was when this one was filed. But I had given this exact criminal complaint and this one right here, a felony theft complaint. I had written the sheriff, Kelly Rowe, and Matt Harris, my wife's second attorney on the second divorce, because her first attorneys passed away on the second divorce petition. Matt Harris and Kelly Rowe, this is Matt Harris, right? Matthew Harris, and Kelly Rowe's the sheriff of Lubbock County. I have performed 6 times for Kelly Rowe for his foreign exchange student program from Texas Tech. This guy knows me personally. I went to his office and I said, hey, Kelly, man, this is void judgment, man. This guy right here, Matthew Harris, is trying to sell my property based on a void judgment. I need to stop it. They didn't. Second in command signed for it. I have it in here somewhere on my paperwork. So they're named on first degree felonies. Matt Harris, my wife's attorney, his whole paralegal team has been trying to say that I'm vexatious, and it's trying to say that I'm incompetent, trying to say that I'm a nut job. Well, man has readily never accepted new ideas, especially those theories upon which scholarly reputations have been erected. Louis L'Amour said that. I'm just a layman, I'm just a cowboy, and I shoe horses, and I spin a rope for a living. I've performed for the president twice. I performed for Elon Musk's car factory in Austin. I've also performed for Jeff Bezos. And these people think that they are higher than you and I. And when somebody challenges them, you challenge their scholarly reputation, they try to deem you as you're insane and you're crazy.
I would say that it seems like you know more than what they know. I don't know how true that is, just my opinion, because you seem like you know a lot. And I would think they would know a lot not to have void judgments and be violating or at least having conflicts of interest. I know that word pretty well. There's a lot out here in my area.
Well, that's Basic Law 101. You are correct. Conflict of interest, even a lawyer runs a conflict check before you can hire them. A judge is under those same rules and ethics in the code, the canons. They're called canons. And it's an ethics violation. But this one was done intentionally because the judge is friends with the guy that owns the property next to mine. They'd been friends and associates for years. So when you look at the big picture of what a divorce proceeding is, and there's a conflict, and they're in-house in this, they've done everything. Look, this is to the general public. Until you've been involved in the similar actions, it's kind of like this. If you ride a donkey and you think, man, this is the fastest thing I've ever ridden, and then you go get on Secretariat you go, whoa. I thought that mule was fast, but this is fast. If you don't experience that donkey or that fast horse, you're not going to ever know what a fast horse is. So till you're on the train ride and you're jumped on the bandwagon, you don't understand what the public is getting fleeced by. And it's a bunch of high individuals that are there. They go to school, they drink beer and they party and they do drugs. And you know, the Bible says this. It says, separate thee Barnabas and Saul for the work whereunto I call them. And from thence one went to Sicily and one went to Cyprus, and the Spirit bade with them. So in my experience while I was unlawfully incarcerated, actually it's kidnapped, because they were notified under 20.04. A person commits an offense if he intentionally, willingly, knowingly abducts another person with the intent to hold them for ransom or reward. And I'll show you here in just a minute a picture of a wanted poster that Sheriff Kelly Rowe named on this federal felony criminal complaint. Right here, Kelly Rowe's named on this theft complaint. Put out a wanted poster like Billy the Kid. I mean, I can't make this stuff up. I'm not that smart. They put out a wanted poster for me, and it's kidnapping. They've arrested me 2 or 3 times on a void judgment, and they know it. They've been notified. Look here, let me show you where I notified them. In the newspaper in Lubbock, Texas, in the legal section, because they've been avoiding every single thing that I filed, or hey, judge, you can't be the attorney. Please stop this. Here's where the attorney knows. Here's where Matt Harris knows. Here's where his paralegals know. They even agree that the judge was the attorney, and they're still trying to, and they know the law. They're paid. Here's the legal notice right here. It says, if it be any man's wish or by way of use of legal personages or titles, judges' titles, attorneys' is title, to intercourse with any or all of my sacred trust relationships without my express written consent, said man will be seen as a third-party interloper, where a man will lay a claim of trespass or a breach of trust. These judges and these attorneys are in a trespass on the case. It is a crime. And if it's over $300,000 worth of damage, it's a first-degree felony. And under the organized statute, under organized crime, under Section 7102 of the Texas Penal Code, Chapter 11, they have no defense. Zero. They can't even go in there and say, I plead the fifth. They already know the rules. They have to go by them.
So, okay, now let's wind back down to your story. Pretty little deep rabbit hole here. I'm trying to soak it all in. So, they imprisoned you before, or continue. I don't know if you remember where you kind of left off about your proceedings, because you kind of went off on a tangent, but go ahead.
Okay, so I've been explaining to these judges and these attorneys out of Lubbock, this is a void judgment.
What year?
In 2016.
Okay.
This is 2025. This is 9 years later. I told them all the way till June, when I still lived with my wife from January to June, I contacted them and said, hey, this is a void judgment. This judge, Stephen Johnson, ordered me to take a psychological evaluation. Now watch this, it's even better. I hired Stacy Barber out of Crenshaw, Dupree, and Milam. She said I was crazy. There is no way that judge could have been your wife's attorney. There it is. I don't know how much more plain you can read that that's the attorney and that's the judge, and it's a disqualification. I don't know how you can, this is a simple 101.
You would think it'd be that simple, but they call you crazy when you got the proof right there? I mean, who's really crazy or who's criminal here? Let's be honest.
Correct, you're right, they are criminals. They're crooks. And they're doing it, they're taking my property for a lake because their friends are wanting to put a San Antonio River walk on my property in Lubbock. In 2013, before my divorce decree was even signed, the city of Lubbock had been planning for this lake. Well, this lake project can't be built because it's for entertainment purposes. It's not for drinking water purposes. You cannot put a body of water over a contaminated place within a certain distance. The EPA has been involved. The Texas Rangers have done nothing. I have contacted the FBI, They have done nothing. And they see it right there. They're just avoiding the law because it's a business.
So you're saying they had this plan already in action to take your property, or they were already scoping that property out, correct? And before you even had the divorce, is that accurate? Okay, so then you're saying now they got you on a void judgment, conflict of interest, what I see right there clearly, and now, or when did you find out they were trying to take your land or they were trying to work this deal? When did this all click?
Well, in about 2011, I was shoeing horses on my property, and two people came up in just a Ford pickup truck. And they were at my front gate, and they called me and they said, "Hey, Mr. Chapman, may we come in?" I said, "Sure." So I went and they came in, and I said, "Can I help you?" And they said, "Yeah, we're going to go do some soil samples." I said, "For what?" They said, "We're going to build a lake here." I said, you're going to build a lake here? What? I said, "I didn't know anything about this." And he goes, this one guy was about 45 or 50, and the young man that was with him was about 20. And I was shoeing this horse and clenching the nails, shoeing, not shooting, shoeing. And I was clenching the nails, and I said, "I tell you what," I said, "you boys need to leave my property because you're in a trespass." Not trespassing. Trespassing is a future word which allows you to let them to come on your property. There's past preterite, future, anyway, that's how the English language is written. I said, "You're in a trespass. Don't come on my property." And he goes, the older gentleman says, "Well, it's going to be a $20 million a year savings to the taxpayer." I said, "I tell you what, if that's going to be a savings to the taxpayer, shoot, I'll give you a year to give me $20 million and I'll leave. Otherwise, the deal's off the table." And I looked at this young man. I said, "Young man, how would you like it if I came to your house and told you you got 10, 50, I tell you what, you're paying $2,000 a month for your home, and I say, I think you need to get out of your house. I tell you what, I'll give you I'll give you $6,000 for your house. Get out. Are you going to like me very well?" And I said, "This man right here, this older gentleman, is teaching you how to steal, young man." And I said, "Y'all get off my property and don't come back." And I said, "You tell the water board this deal's off if they don't do it within a year." So they leave, and about 2 weeks later, a man comes up with his wife. And he pulls in the gate, and I said, "Can I help you?" He said, "Yeah, we're with HDR engineering firm." HDR, if you know history and you studied, HDR builds dams across the world. They built dams everywhere. They built the Hoover Dam, and I'm fixing to tell you what I tell this guy. He says, "We need to come out here and do some samples." I said, "Look," I said, "did y'all bring my earnest money for my property? Because that last guy said he was going to tell the water board, so y'all are going to pay me my earnest money for my property. And then y'all pay me my $20 million. He said, "We didn't even heard anything about that." And I said, "Well, I tell you what." I said, "Well, I didn't know anything about this lake." And he goes, "You don't know anything about this lake?" And I said, "No, sir." He goes, "Well, your name's all over it, Brice Chapman." I said, "Well, I never have heard of it until the last couple of weeks ago." And I said, he goes, "They haven't written you an email." I said, "No, sir." He said, "They haven't written you a letter?" I said, "No, sir." And he says, "So you mean to tell me that they haven't written you a letter or an email? I find that hard to believe." I went, "You just called me a liar. Get off my place and don't come back. Deal's off. You tell your water board and all your attorney friends down there, don't come mess with my place and don't steal it." Well, I've had a death threat from the sheriff since then, off of a wanted poster. If I can find this wanted poster. I have a wanted poster that they put out for me somewhere in here. And here you go. Here's your wanted poster. And if you look real close, it says "reward offered." I called this number, which is the sheriff department, and I talked to some deputy. He could have been the janitor for all I know. I don't know, but I recorded it. And the guy off of that number right there said it's going to be pretty much that we're going to have to shoot you to get you out of your house. That's from a sheriff. That is not, ladies and gentlemen, how the law works. That is oppression. That's tyranny. It's racketeering. And to pass out a wanted poster under Article 18, Section 1951 through 1962, 1968, it's a Racketeering, Influence, Corrupt Organization Act. And Matt Harris, the one that's named on that felony criminal complaint with Sheriff Kelly Rowe and those judges, personally took that wanted poster and handed it out. If that wanted poster fell on the ground and somebody finds it, they could shoot me. They could get away with it. Why? Because it says we're wanted for something. It doesn't say what I'm wanted for, but there's a reward offered. And under Penal Code 20.04 in the Texas Penal Code, it states that, like I said, a person can offer a reward. That's by a private party. You read the poster. They do so many little tricks that you don't even realize that and a person can't keep up with it unless they've been right in the middle of the river.
I got a question. What were you wanted for? Did they charge you? What was the charge?
A Class C misdemeanor. Yeah, Class C misdemeanor. For non-payment of child support based off of a void judgment where the judge was my wife's attorney. Everything on that divorce decree, property division, divorce, child support, guess what? All void, as it never existed. Here's the problem with this. They were notified, they were warned, they were told it's a void judgment. All they had to do at one point was say, hey, there has to be a whole new divorce petition filed, not under that same cause number. It can't be, with a totally different judge. They didn't do it. Now here's what happened. The first judge, Stephen Johnson, I showed you his name, he made me take a psych test. So I hired that lady, Stacy Barber, out of Crenshaw, Dupree, and Milam. The judge that took over the case was in her same law firm of Crenshaw, Dupree, and Milam. He's constitutionally disqualified as well. Under Texas Rules Civil Procedure 18B, a judge who is an attorney in the same law firm, it impugns the knowledge to every attorney in the law firm. They even put that he was an ostensible partner in Crenshaw, Dupree, and Milam on the county court website. That's how dumb they are.
And what happened with that situation?
Okay, the judge so there was a hearing on this psychological evaluation, which was redundant. They try to deem you crazy. So this same judge, Billy Eichmann, wanted me to take it again with the same doctor. The doctor refused to do it. He said the guy's a borderline genius. He's not stupid. He's not insane. He's mad because y'all are in the process of stealing his property. And that judge can't render anything. So Stacy Barber and Billy Eichmann in the same law firm with Matt Harris in the same courtroom, waive disqualification because they're in the same law firm. And guess what? Recusal can be waived. It's a different term. Disqualification cannot be waived by either party nor their attorney. It is mandatory that case goes away like it never existed, and a whole new case number has to be assigned with new judges.
And it didn't go away.
It didn't. 9 years later, I'm still fighting this. I've been in jail for 1.5 years on a void judgment. They've stolen my property. They threatened to kill me. You saw the wanted poster. I have the audio of the death threat from the sheriff. I've notified Kelly Rowe. I've told these guys ad nauseum till I'm sick of it that this is a void judgment. Y'all can't. Okay, on a void judgment, no one can enforce a void judgment. Not the sheriff, not a judge. And I filed a motion to disqualify the judge. It's a 3-day mandatory rule to disqualify a judge. Mandatory, if it's constitutional disqualification. This one's, obviously the judge was the same attorney. They never responded to it. November 22nd of 2024. A void judgment can be challenged at any time. And they don't even want to listen to me. They don't want to listen to anybody. This is happening all over the state. This is not just, I'm not the Lone Ranger here. They're doing it all over in Tarrant County. They're doing it all over in Harris County, San Antonio, Fort Worth. They're doing it in Midland County. They're doing it everywhere, and they're usurping the Constitution little by little. They're slyly mining and chipping away the corners of the Constitution, and they're doing it so slightly that not even the open force would dare to do that. Thomas Jefferson, he said that.
Okay, so they try to take they go in there try to build a lake, right?
Correct.
And you weren't even aware of that?
Not at first, no.
Okay, so where you at now? I mean, we're in 2025. What's the unless you got somewhere else to go in the middle of that whole story, where we at now and what's going on?
Well, if you're aware of what I've been describing as of up to this time, the trial court is just a money laundering issue. Judges, attorneys, they're criminals. And the police are usurping the Constitution. They're not following the enforcement rules. Nobody's doing it. So which means that this lawlessness, when public officials and servants and judges are entrusted to enforce the law against the public, it wouldn't be that difficult for them to abide by it themselves. There is case after case, Olmstead versus U.S., United States, there's I don't know what the name of that case is just right off hand, but these people are breaking the law right in front of everybody's face, and they're trafficking people, they're laundering money, they're taking people's money by speed traps, it's entrapment. There's a whole lot, and they try to say you're a sovereign citizen. In Black's Law Dictionary here, doesn't even have the definition of a sovereign citizen in it. Black's Law Dictionary does not have a sovereign citizen word in it.
And what's the deal with that? That's like a bad word, or what? I hear that word a lot.
These people are trying to say that they're psychiatrists and doctors of psychology. They're giving you a term. They're rubber stamping you as a vexatious litigant or a sovereign citizen. Doesn't even have a sovereign citizen in the dictionary this is the one that they use. These people are labeling other people and getting away with theft. I videoed the sale of my ranch at the sheriff department. I have a list pendants. I told them, I had a friend of mine, my mother was in the hospital at the time, and I sent 4 of my friends into the courtroom, actually the lawn of the courthouse, to watch this sale of my property. My mom had had a TAVR procedure, it's a heart procedure, and I had taken her to the hospital that morning, July the 6th of 2021. I sent 4 people to the courthouse to give them a list pendants and say that that's a homestead. Under Article 16, Section 50 and 51 of the Texas Constitution, you can't have your home, you can't have a forced sale of a homestead. Texas law is different than any other state in the United States. The homestead provisions are concrete, and you cannot deviate from them. You can just say, this is my homestead, and just sleep on the ground. If it's your property, you don't even have to designate it as your homestead in the court records. There's a lot of ambiguities in the legal system, and there's a lot of gray area in the law, and it's there for a reason, because some of those attorneys and the judges, they don't want to push those issues down at Congress to change those laws, because they're not going to get them passed. And from my point of view, you can't kick somebody out of their homestead. The only people that can do it in a foreclosure is the bank. And you've had to really been behind. You can't foreclose on kids. I have a special needs brother. He's special needs, and he lives in a group home. If he was living in my house with me, they cannot force the sale of that homestead, because it's a constitutional issue. Just like taking a home for foreclosure. They cannot foreclose on my home because I wasn't late on my payments. My taxes were paid, and they said that I owed child support and attorney's fees. They were going to hold me in jail for the rest of my life. Let me repeat that one more time. This attorney, Matt Harris, and the judges in Lubbock County, Lubbock, Texas, USA, were going to hold me in jail for the rest of my life because I caught them scamming and stealing based off of a void judgment on a Class C misdemeanor. They were going to revoke my community supervision every 10 years. They would keep me in jail, revoke it 10 years. And the local veterinarian, who's my friend, paid $27,000 to get me out of jail on this void order, because that was what they said I owed on child support, was $21,000 of that $27,000. $6,000 of that was for attorney's fees. You cannot hold a man in prison or jail for non-payment of attorney's fees, not even on a void judgment. The corruption is so deep that you have no idea. And for me, in my heart, I see everybody that has been a victim of the criminal justice system or the civil, of just the judiciary. These attorneys and these judges are wrecking people's lives. They're stealing. Here's kind of an example. How come if they have LexisNexis and they know that there's a foreclosure in Montana or California on a ranch, how come a judge or an attorney owns a ranch in Montana and the one in Montana owns one in Texas? It's because they have information that leads to a LexisNexis. And that's how it's called structuring. And it's a Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organization Act. It's insider trading, and they structure it to benefit themselves. And that's how these attorneys and these judges are getting away with it. And they want a lake to build hotels and motels and restaurants for a San Antonio River walk so they can all make money based off of void judgment, and they can't do that.
Okay, so winding down here, what did you come here for? What's the end result that you want?
Well, my end result is I sent them a bill. If you are in a legal battle, I sent my wife's attorney a certified mail that if you throw me in jail, it's going to cost you $2,500 for every 10 minutes that you throw me in jail. Even if you go to jail, every man is entitled to just compensation for their time. I performed, and that was just kind of a run-of-the-mill performance for every 10 minutes. I thought that might be a great number. I could have added more. They signed for it. They signed that they received this bill. That's how dumb these people are. They don't even read what they're getting. The judge's secretary, notice to agent, is notice to principal. Notice to principal is notice to agent. So if you tell the judge's clerk or secretary, I'm giving you this bill as a notice, and they sign for it, that makes the state liable for the harm. The first rule of law is what? Do no harm. That's as simple as you can get it. And when they usurp the Constitution and intentionally, willingly, knowingly act on it, it's called mens res. They have to have a mind thought of it for the intent, and then they have to have a mens res, an actus reus. They have to act on it. So they think about it and then they do it. And they think about it and they do it like it's just drinking water.
Okay, Brice, we're going to wind down here. Final words for everybody watching. Go ahead.
I appreciate you, everybody listening. You can contact me at 2005bcgc@gmail. That's the only way to contact me. I was also going to say something about if you hire an attorney under sur juris, you give up your rights and they speak on your behalf. It says that an officer of the court, their first duty is to the court, not to the client, therefore making the client a second-class citizen. So when you hire an attorney, you give up your rights to speak for yourself. I encourage everybody to get a little bit more confidence in themselves and believe in what you do. And questions are the best way to get around these legal issues. Ask a lot of questions, and if anybody has any questions or can help me in any way, please don't hesitate to contact me or discuss your issues. That's the only way we're going to get this stuff overturned.
All right. Thank you, Brice.